Hello, this is Shmuel Moshe, and you are listening to the Weekly Parashahcast, a weekly Torah portion podcast where I read the weekly Torah portion and then provide my own commentary and interpretation on what I think it all means. This week's Torah portion is Tazria, which translates to Conceives and falls on the 5th of Nissan, 5784, April 13th, 2024. Vayikra chapter 12, verse 1 is where we're beginning. We'll go ahead and jump right into it, but first I'd like to remind everybody once again, I'm not a professional Torah scholar, just somebody who wanted to study the Torah. With all that said, let's go ahead and jump on in with chapter 12, verse 1 of Vayikra, Leviticus, for portion Tazria. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, If a woman conceives and gives birth to a male, she shall be unclean for 7 days. As in the days of her menstrual flow, she shall be unclean. And on the 8th day the flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised. And for 33 days she shall remain in the blood of purity. She shall not touch anything holy, nor may she enter the sanctuary, until the days of her purification have been completed. And if she gives birth to a female, she shall be unclean for 2 weeks, like her menstruation period, and for 66 days she shall remain in the blood of purity. When the days of her purification have been completed, whether for a son or for a daughter, she shall bring a sheep in its first year as a burnt offering, and a young dove or a turtle dove as a sin offering, to the entrance of the tent of meeting, to the Kohen. And he shall offer it up before the Lord, and effect atonement for her, and thus she will be purified from the source of her blood. This is the law of a woman who gives birth to a male or to a female. And if she cannot afford a sheep, she shall take 2 turtle doves, or 2 young doves, one as a burnt offering, and one as a sin offering. And the Kohen shall effect atonement for her, and she shall become clean. Chapter 13, verse 1. And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, If a man has sayet, or sapachat, or baharet on the skin of his flesh, and it forms a lesion of tzarat on the skin of his flesh, he shall be brought to Aaron the Kohen, or to one of his sons the Kohanim. The Kohen shall look at the lesion of the skin of his flesh, and if hair in the lesion has turned white, and the appearance of the lesion is deeper than the skin of his flesh, it is a lesion of tzarat. When the Kohen sees him, he shall pronounce him unclean. But if it is a white baharet on the skin of his flesh, and its appearance is not deeper than the skin, and its hair not turned white, the Kohen shall quarantine the person with the lesion for 7 days. And on the 7th day the Kohen shall see him. And behold, the lesion has remained the same in its appearance, the lesion has not spread on the skin, so the Kohen shall quarantine him for 7 days a second time. All right, so that's the end of the first portion here. So the theme that we're going to see all throughout this, and by the way, it is a rather short portion compared to other ones. This is the entirety, that is, not just the first one. It's all about purity, right? It's purity laws related to things that are clean or unclean. And so in the case of this particular parashah verse, or these verses, the first one here focuses first on women having children and the purity of them. So it's already been established that a woman who's undergoing her menstrual cycle, she is considered to be unclean or impure from a spiritual standpoint due to the blood. So that is something that's relevant here when a child is born, right? So she's going to have to be isolated, essentially, because she is unclean. She's not going to be able to do certain things that would require one to be purified. And it says the specific number of days that they have to be is actually different for boys and girls, whether they give birth to a child that's a male or a female. So that's very interesting. The question becomes, so why is it that it's 2 women, or why is it to double for when a girl is born versus when a boy is born? My theory, I've got 2 ideas here that I can maybe explain this. The first one that comes to mind is that if you give birth to a girl, then it's double the impurity, right? Because they're both immersed in that situation. Whereas a boy does not do that, so maybe that's why. The other reason is maybe that the circumcision of the boy is also a way to cut down on the purification time. I don't know, really. I'm just offering speculation at this point. Now, the second part, starting in chapter 13, we hear about skin conditions, namely Tzarat. Now, Tzarat is not a skin condition that we see today. It is a medical condition that seems to be spiritually afflicted in some capacity. And some citation for that happens, where do we see Tzarat before this? We see it when Moses meets the burning bush, and he's told to place his hand inside of his breast and then pull it back out. And then behold, his hand had turned white. So the term is leprosy in most cases. That's a translation, but Tzarat is a totally different condition than leprosy. So that is something I wanted to make a point of. So a person can be covered in it or have spots of it, and when they are, it's considered unclean to have it. So this is now going into how the Kohanim can make a distinction. They look at you when you have one of these blemishes on your skin, and they can determine if you're unclean or not. Then they take that person and they separate them from the camp so that they can make a final decision when they look at it a week later to see how the condition has progressed. So with all of that finally being said, we're going to continue from there and jump into the second portion. Chapter 13, verse 6. And the Kohen shall see him on the seventh day a second time, and behold, the lesion has become dimmer, and the lesion has not spread on the skin. The Kohen shall pronounce him clean. It is a mishpachat. He shall amends his garments and become clean. However, if the mishpachat treads on his skin after it has been shown to the Kohen for its purification, it shall be shown to the Kohen a second time. The Kohen shall look at it, and behold, the mishpachat has spread on the skin. The Kohen shall pronounce him unclean. It is Tzarat. If the man has a lesion of Tzarat, he shall be brought to the Kohen. If the Kohen shall look at it, and behold, there is a white sayet on the skin, and it either has turned the hair white, or there is healthy live flesh in the sayet, it is old Tzarat on the skin of his flesh, and the Kohen shall pronounce him unclean. He need not quarantine him, because he is unclean. And if the Tzarat had spread over the skin, whereby the Tzarat covers all the skin of the person with the lesion from his head to his feet, wherever the eyes of the Kohen can see it, then the Kohen shall look at it, and behold, the Tzarat has covered all his flesh. He shall pronounce the person with the lesion clean. He has turned completely white. He is clean. But on the day that live flesh appears in it, he shall become unclean. When the Kohen sees his healthy live flesh, he shall pronounce him unclean. The live flesh is unclean. It is Tzarat. But if the healthy live flesh once again turns right, he shall come to the Kohen. And the Kohen shall look at it, and behold, the lesion has turned white. The Kohen shall pronounce the lesion clean. He is clean. So this is a very, very interesting passage, this discourse on the Tzarat here. So first off, we're getting some specifics about what needs to be done for the purification purposes. The guy has to, of course, immerse himself, immerse his garments, make sure the traditional cleaning process is done. But there's a lot of distinction here over which sort of conditions qualify. I want to make a point that it basically seems to be that if it has these certain qualities of the skin turning white or the hair turning white, right, and it's a blemish, then it's unclean, versus if it's the guy's entire body covered head to toe in this white, it's not unclean. So what's the deal with that? So in this case, this is very interesting to me. The guy who has the condition where his entire skin has turned white, this is still Tzarat, but he is considered clean because it's 100% thorough. Whereas if it starts to recover and his skin starts to turn normal, suddenly he gets told that he's unclean. So wouldn't he be considered unclean while his whole body has been turned white? Isn't that proof that he's unclean? Well, no. So I think the real key here, what makes it clean versus unclean, is not explicitly the Tzarat itself, but rather the fact that there's two different kinds of skin going on here. Now, we see similar examples of mixing not being kosher, right? So you can't have two kinds of animals. You can't mix two different kinds of thread, right? So if you have like a jacket that's made of cotton and wool and other materials, it's considered mixed, and that's not allowed. So maybe that is the reason here, because the flesh is two different things, both the pure white skin of Tzarat and some of the healthy normal skin, that's considered unclean. But if all of him is one or the other, then he is still clean. Very interesting. But either way, eventually, once he starts to recover, it'll be okay. Now, another thing about Tzarat, but it seems to be a divine consequence, right? A divine punishment. When you get Tzarat, it's not like your normal illness. It's something that gets afflicted upon you spiritually. So rather than traditional leprosy, that's kind of the situation with this particular ailment. Very interesting to me, but I thought I would just make that distinction. I think it has more to do with the two different types of flesh versus it being flesh at all. So, okay, going on from there, we'll jump into the third portion. Leviticus chapter 13, verse 18. If a person's flesh has an inflammation on its skin, and it heals, and on the place of the inflammation there is a white set, or a reddish-white beheret, it shall be shown to the Kohen. The Kohen shall look at it, and behold, its appearance is lower than the skin, and its hair has turned white, so the Kohen shall pronounce him unclean. It is a lesion of Tzarat that has erupted on the inflammation. But if the Kohen looks at it, and behold, it does not contain white hair, nor does it appear to be lower than the skin, and it is dim, the Kohen shall quarantine him for 7 days, and if it spread on the skin, the Kohen shall pronounce him unclean. It is a lesion. But if the beheret remains in place, not spreading, it is the scar tissue of the inflammation, and the Kohen shall pronounce him clean. That's the end of the portion, very short. So the real takeaway here is that we have a lot of different skin ailments that can happen, and it's not 100% certain which is right, which is wrong, right? So from there, basically the Kohen's job is to be able to make this clear distinction over what is and is not. It could simply be, he just had a little bit of a rash, maybe he touched some sand that was itchy or whatever, and he scratched it, and now it's got a little reddishness to it. That's one thing. But if it's starting to show signs of Tzarat, the Kohen will isolate him and allow him to be observed and revisited to be fully assessed later. So, separating one from the camp. Why do they remove them from the camp? This is a very interesting question, right? Why do they get taken out separately? So, you would think in terms of diseases that sort of thing is a matter of you don't want it to spread, right? Infection, viral, contagious, whatever. But in the case of Tzarat, it seems to be less about that as much as it's a matter of spreading unclean impurity. So, much like the women in the beginning of this Torah portion have to be away from certain things because of the state of impurity that comes with the menstrual cycle, so too do the people who undergo Tzarat experiences, because once they're exposed to this, they are no longer clean. And so if they come into contact with clean people, those clean people become unclean also. And it's very dangerous because, certain things like coming into the holy areas while unclean is basically a death sentence. So we can't have that. In any case, this is just another example of breaking that down and making those kinds of diagnoses. On to the fourth portion, chapter 13, verse 24. If a person's flesh has a fire burn on its skin, and on the healed area of the burn there is a reddish-white or white baharet, the Kohen shall look at it, and behold, the hair is turned white in the baharet, and its appearance is deeper than the skin. It is Tzarat, which has spread in the burn, so the Kohen shall pronounce him unclean. It is a lesion of Tzarat. But if the Kohen looks at it, and behold, there is no white hair in the baharet, and it is not lower than the skin, and it is dim, the Kohen shall quarantine him for 7 days. And the Kohen shall look at it on the 7th day. If it is spread on the skin, the Kohen shall pronounce him unclean. It is a lesion of Tzarat. But if the baharet remains in place, not increasing on the skin, and it is dim, it is a sayeth of the burn, and the Kohen shall pronounce him clean, because it is the scar tissue of the burn. So, once again, a short portion there, but the takeaway is, Tzarat is something that can be very easily mistaken for another injury or another kind of skin problem. So now we have an example of if somebody suffers from a burn victim, right? They have that problem to deal with. So what do you do with a burn victim? Well, now we know the specifics. If beneath the skin of the burn, in other words, we're seeing that Tzarat comes from within almost, it's skin deep, right? It's not surface level. And that's something you'll notice in all these portions is that the Tzarat affliction, which is the white skin, the white hair, so on, this is something that is deeper than just the outer skin. This is something that goes deep inside from the epidermis into the dermis, right? And if I'm using the correct skin language for science. Anyway, now we know the circumstances of a burn victim as well. Chapter 13, verse 29, the fifth portion. If a man or a woman has a lesion on the head or on the beard area, the Kohen shall look at the lesion, and behold, its appearance is deeper than the skin, and it is a thin golden yellow hair. The Kohen shall pronounce him unclean. It is a netek, which is a Tzarat of the head or the beard. But when the Kohen looks at the netek lesion, and behold, its appearance is not deeper than the skin, and there is no black hair in it, the Kohen shall quarantine the person with the netek lesion for 7 days. And the Kohen shall look at the lesion on the 7th day, and behold, the netek has not spread, and no golden yellow hair was in it, and the appearance of the netek is not deeper than the skin. He shall shave himself, but adjacent to the netek he shall not shave. And the Kohen shall quarantine the person with the netek for again 7 days. Then the Kohen shall look at the netek on the 7th day, and behold, the netek did not spread on the skin, and its appearance is not deeper than the skin. The Kohen shall pronounce him clean, and he shall immerse his garments and become clean. But if the netek spreads on the skin, after he has been declared clean, the Kohen shall look at it, and behold, the netek has spread on the skin. The Kohen need not examine for golden yellow hair. It is unclean. But if the appearance of the netek has remained the same, or if black hair has grown in it, the netek has healed. He is clean, so the Kohen shall pronounce him clean. If a man or woman has spots on the skin or their flesh, white spots, the Kohen shall look, and behold, there are dim white spots on the skin of their flesh. It is a bohak, pigmentation, which has spread on the skin. He is clean. So, now we get another example of a person's hair, particularly on their head, their beard, whatever. If some of it changes color or things of that nature, you see, oh, there's a golden hair among all the other hairs. What's the deal with that? So these are some very specific cases that the Kohen can recognize the person is suffering from, once again, a lesion of impurity, and they'll need to be separated from the camp regardless, just to be properly observed and diagnosed at a later time. So with all of that in consideration, definitely keeping that in mind, right? The Kohen's job is pretty extensive when it comes to making these sort of declarations of who is clean and unclean, and also the people themselves suffering from these constant things. Basically, you'll notice that the big issue is they're observing to see if the lesion will spread beyond just the one spot. You can think of it like cancer in a way, right? Does it spread or is it benign? If it's malignant, it starts spreading and goes to other parts of the body. We don't want that. So that's how you observe, right? And in this case, we're also seeing a lot of false alarms. If it's not a full-on Tzarat, it turns out it's just these other things that we have a term for, like a netek, right? So we'll know. So going on to the 6th portion, chapter 13, verse 40. If a man loses the hair on the back of his head, he is bald, he is clean. And if he loses his hair on the side toward his face, he is bald at the front, he is clean. If there is a reddish-white lesion on the back or front bald area, and it is a spreading tzarat in the back or front bald area. So the Kohen shall look at it, and behold, there is a reddish-white set lesion on his back or front bald area, like the appearance of tzarat on the skin of the flesh. He is a man afflicted with tzarat. He is unclean. The Kohen shall surely pronounce him unclean, his lesion on his head. And the person with tzarat, in whom there is the lesion, his garment shall be torn, his head shall be unshorn, he shall cover himself down to his mustache, and call out, Unclean, unclean. All the days the lesion is upon him, he shall remain unclean. He is unclean, he shall dwell isolated, his dwelling shall be outside the camp. And as for the garment that has the lesion of tzarat upon it, a woolen garment, or a linen garment, or on threads prepared for the warp of the woof, of linen, or of wool, or on leather, or on anything made from leather, if the lesion on the garment, the leather, the warp, or woof threads on any leather article is deep green or deep red, it is a lesion of tzarat, and it shall be shown to the Kohen. The Kohen shall look at the lesion, and he shall quarantine the article with the lesion for 7 days. And he shall look at the lesion on the 7th day. If the lesion has spread on the garment, or on the warp or woof threads, or on the leather, or any article made from leather, the lesion is malignant tzarat, it is unclean. And he shall burn the garment, the warp or woof threads of wool or linen, or any leather article which has the lesion upon it, for it is a malignant tzarat, it shall be burned in fire. But if the Kohen looks, and behold, the lesion has not spread on the garment, the warp or woof threads, or any leather article, the Kohen shall order that they shall wash what the lesion is upon, and he shall quarantine it again for 7 days. Woo! Okay, that's the 6th portion. So, now we hear about people with baldness, right? Being bald is fine as far as this is concerned in terms of cleanliness. Look, if he loses his hair, that's not a symbol of him being impure or unclean. He's just bald, right? Whether it's the side of his head or the front of his head or the back, whatever it is, it's okay to be bald. That's not a status of cleanliness. But if there's a reddish-white lesion on the bald area, it is tzarat. So the Kohen's going to make a distinction here. He's going to look at it, and he's going to, of course, make sure to isolate the guy. But also there are some extra steps here. The guy's going to tear his garments. He's going to not shave his head, and he's going to cover himself down to his mustache and call out unclean, unclean. So he has to actually, it's kind of like, man, like that's rough. When you're unclean, you have to basically acknowledge it yourself, right? So if it's on top of the head, that seems to be a very personal sort of, it almost seems like this is an advanced level of a blemish. It's something that's more than just your standard unholiness or uncleanliness. You're really being punished. So that's where you see it in this case. Now, with that said, also different garments can receive the same kind of tzarat. Tzarat is not exclusive to human flesh. It can also spread on clothing. So think of it, if you've ever seen just something like you get bleach or something on an outfit. I don't know if that's really the best example, but it's just like when someone's ill, right? And you can see that it's also soiling their clothes, right? In this case, it's actually on a holy level. The stain of tzarat can be on a garment too. So the Kohen will take a look at whatever it is, whatever this garment or object is, and he's going to make an observation. He's going to quarantine it, review it, and if he notices that the disease of tzarat is spreading across the garment, you can almost think of it like a curse, right? If you see the curse is spreading, then it's time to burn it. And if it doesn't spread and you realize it's not malignant, okay, we're just going to wash it and we'll call it a day. So interesting that this tzarat, I think this is also very important to establish. This is not simply something that is flesh-born, but rather something that can be on actual items as well. On to the 7th portion. Oh, I think I should also mention, though, that the items that we're describing here, like, they come from animals, don't they? So, in a sense, it is on organic material as well. It almost makes me think of like a fungus. Anyway, 7th portion, chapter 13, verse 55. The Kohen shall look at it after the lesion has been washed, and behold, the lesion has not changed in appearance, and the lesion has not spread, it is unclean. You shall burn it in fire. It is a penetrating lesion on the worn or new article. But if the Kohen looks at it after it has been washed, and behold, the lesion has become dimmer, he shall tear it out of the garment, out of the leather, or out of the warp or woof threads. And if it appears again on the garment, the warp or woof threads, or any leather article, it is a recurrent growth of the lesion. You shall burn it in fire, the article upon which the lesion is found. But the garment, the warp or woof threads, or any leather article which is washed, and the lesion disappears from them, it shall be immersed a second time, and it shall be clean. This is the law of the lesion of Tzarat on a woolen or linen garment, warp or woof threads, or any leather article to render it clean or unclean. All right, so once again, to kind of round that out, so almost like describing cancer once again, or some kind of growth or fungus, it's something that can be malignant or benign, and if it's benign and you're able to wash it, the Kohen he puts it through the wash, he looks at it, and he says, oh, look at that, it's actually starting to fade away. Okay, what we're going to do is we're just going to cut out the part that's unclean, and then we'll restore this garment to how it was. Or, in the case of it not going away, in other words, they do the wash, and it's a deep clean, but the change is non-existent, it stays just as dark as it was, they have to burn that garment anyway. Even if it's not spreading, the fact is it's such a deep corruption that it is something that it just simply cannot be redeemed, and they have to destroy it. So, fire seems to be the simple answer here. In conclusion, this has been a very good overview of the Kohen's responsibilities related to cleanliness, having to do specifically with the affliction of Tzarat. So, chapter 12 is where we were covering things related to birth and children. All of chapter 13 was about Tzarat specifically. Obviously, this was a very significant affliction that took place in the time, and also because the fact that it was a holy period, I do think that this disease may or may not exist anymore, but the fact that they talk about it in such length here gives me firm reason to believe that I often call this the age of miracles. This historically, right? If we look at this like a historical time period, not as a biblical mythos, but actually like a historical event, I call this the age of miracles, where the acts of divine were abundantly clear and present on earth at the time. And so Tzarat is a byproduct of that very, very mystical time period, and that's why it existed then, but maybe not necessarily now. So it's something that they needed to know how to deal with, but just like modern days, right, if everybody gets a polio vaccine across the world and suddenly the polio disease gets eradicated, well, do we really need to know how to treat polio anymore? No, unless it comes back. So this is something I think is a similar situation. Tzarat itself may not be active, it may not be a threat now, but that doesn't mean it couldn't someday return under certain circumstances. So that's why it's very important to have this documented example of how to cure it, how to treat it, how to address it, and what needs to be done to preserve the holiness and cleanliness of the community. With all that said, this has been Shmuel Moshe with the Weekly Parashahcast. I hope you've enjoyed listening in, and I hope you'll tune in next time. Stay clean, everybody. Make sure you don't get any of that Tzarat, and if you do, try to find a Kohen to take a look at it. Until next time, this has been Shmuel Moshe. Baruch Hashem.